Hello, welcome to another video from BetfairTradingCommunity.com. Today I'm going to take you through a live trade where in theory we're laying the favourite. So we're going to lay the favourite in this scenario, and I'm going to talk about why I'm doing that as we go. I'm going to go through some of the theory, I'm going to give you some training, then we're going to get to the live example. At the moment, the match I want to trade is currently at halftime. I'm watching the match, which is obviously massively beneficial. So if you're able to watch the match as you're trading, I do suggest you do that as much as you can. And we're going to look at Como playing Juventus, okay? Como were originally the underdogs. They're now the favourite, as you can see, 4-5 on Bet365. And I'll get the match up on Betfair here for us so that we can see what the actual Betfair odds are. Let's see, there it is. Okay, very similar actually, 1.91, so a little bit higher. But in this scenario, I've been watching the game, and what's interesting to me here, and I want to talk a little bit about the theory, is that if you look at the match stats, we can see that Como have had 6 shots, 3 of them on target, but Juventus have had 9 shots. Okay, they actually had a goal disallowed as well, which is another stat that doesn't go into the books. The guy was fractionally offside. Okay, so you could look at that as maybe 1 on target, another shot if you wanted to include that there. You're talking about razor thin margins. But basically, from what I've been watching, Juventus look well capable of getting back into this game. Look like they could equalise, may even go on to win the match here. So the theory when you're laying a favourite, for me, when you're looking at the theory, the first thing you want to look at is, should they be the favourite? Now in this scenario, I think it's actually more marginal than you might think. You might think, well, they're 1-0 up, of course they should be favourite. But that's way too simplistic. In this scenario here, Juventus actually have a really good chance of getting back into the game. I'm going to talk about why that is as we go. But the first part of my theory with this trade is that I think Juventus are going to get back into this game. I think there's a really good chance of that happening. I actually think the odds of Como are too short. I don't think there's more than a 50% chance they will win. I would have it as around a kind of maybe 30% chance, something like that at the moment. So I'm not saying Como can't win, and there's always the danger. The big danger scoreline here is 2-0. If Como get that second goal, it could potentially kill off the game. Not necessarily, but there is that chance that Como break away and score another goal. But from what I've been watching, Juventus have been well on top. And again, a lot of this comes down to what I've seen with my own eyes. I'm looking at the in-play stats. The in-play stats are more marginal here. If I was just looking at the in-play stats, I might not see much value here. I mean, it says XG for Como is 0.8 and 0.55 for Juventus. But I actually think if you're watching that first half, you would have a different opinion of that XG, which is always something that interests me. The XG stat, a really popular one, but not one I've always been particularly convinced about. But anyway, that's some of the theory. What I really want to do here actually is train you, because if you're going to lay a favourite, you sure as hell need some good reasoning to do it. I've got some decent theory, but where's my proof of concept? Where's my training going to take me, and what am I going to train you to do? So the first thing I want you to do is bring up your stats software. Now, I don't care where you get your stats from. I do these videos so that anyone can watch them and learn from them, whether you're a member of BetfairTradingCommunity.com or not. Of course, I'm going to use the BetfairTradingCommunity.com software. It's much simpler to use than others, and it's so much quicker for me to get all the stats I need to make this trade and decide whether it's a trade I'm going to make, because I haven't actually entered this trade yet. You can see the market. Now, am I going to enter this trade? I'm pretty sure I will. But actually what I want, and what the training I want to do for you, is to get some in-play stats so that we can go, okay, I want to see why this game could potentially be a value play. So, having a look at halftime scores, there's been 4 0-1 scores here, and then at full time only 2 0-1s. And actually, some of the 0-0s probably converted into 0-1s. The reason I say that is that there's 6 halftime 0-0s in the halftime scores, and none of them have not had a second half goal. Okay. Now, if we look at goal times here, we can see that the goals are actually pretty similar between half 1 and half 2. In an ideal world, I'd actually like the half 2 goals to be a lot higher. If we look percentage wise, we can actually see it's around 50-50, 51-49, but there's no point splitting hairs when it's that close. And looking at score conceded here, we can see a similar kind of thing, okay? But we can see that 80% of the time there is a second half goal. So there's a good chance in this match there will be a second half goal. And obviously we want it to go our way, and we want to look at what stats can help us with that. As we look at over-unders here, we can see that over 0.5 was 100%. Now, if we go to the overs markets, which is another thing that's good to check out, you can see over 1.5, still pretty short. Okay, I think there's definitely going to be a second half goal, but at that price, do you want to take it? It's marginal. That's why I'm much more interested in getting something in on the match odds. But I do think there is going to be a second half goal. Like I say, 80% of the time there's a second half goal. When Como are playing at home and Juventus are playing away, last 10 matches. So as we're looking at the bare stats here, we're kind of getting an overall impression that there should be a second half goal. But how can we think that this is going to be a Juventus goal, and what is it that could lead us to it from the stats? There's actually something I'm going to look at that I don't usually mention in these videos that much, but is actually important. Let's look at the league table, right? Let's look at the league table. Juventus in particular, currently in 5th place, right? They've not lost. And actually, if you go back through Juventus' history, they rarely lose matches in the Serie A. They draw a lot. And again, look, they've won half their games, they've drawn half their games. Now, I think there's a good chance they draw or win this game. Okay, I think there's a good chance that happens. Como also don't lose a lot of games. Look, they've only lost 1 out of the 6, but they've also drawn 3. So they have only won 2 out of 6. It's not like they go and win time after time after time. So this would be a big result. If Como beats Juventus at home, this would be a massive result for Como. Probably the biggest result they've had since they returned to the Serie A last season. So again, some of this is coming from prior knowledge. Some of this is coming from looking at the league tables. And some of this is looking at the stats. But the most important thing I'm using today actually is what I've seen play out in front of me. Okay, now we're getting towards the start of the second half, so I'm going to have to get to the point where I place this lay. I'm going to lay for a £10 liability here, so I'm just going to lay £11, as you can see, at this price, not 1.91. I think it's I actually think it's good value. I think it's a very fair price. We'll just update that, and we should get matched on that fairly quickly here. Now, I obviously use small stakes all the time in these videos because this is where I want you guys to start. I don't want you to come in at the top end. I think it's a really nonsensical thing to do. But I've given myself room here. If Como goes 2-0 up, there might be a spot where I want to lay them at, say, 1.33. Just because I think Juventus might get a goal back. We might be able to kind of get out of our trade without much damage done. But again, when you're laying at odds on, you can lay a fair amount of stake, a fair percentage of your stake, and you don't have to worry too much because you go, well, yeah, I could lose this, but the rewards are going to be big. If Juventus equalise, we're going to be able to get a really good profit on this trade, especially if it's later on in the half. I'm going to go watch the second half now. What I'll be looking out for is, has half-time changed things? Has half-time meant that Como, the manager's got them in, I think Fabregas is still in charge, and he's got them in and he's given them the tactics that's going to help them defend this lead for the half? It looks like that's kind of what they were trying to do. Or maybe the other thing I was thinking they might try and do is hit on the counter-attack. So 2-0 is a dangerous scoreline. One thing you can do in this scenario is have a look at the odds of 2-0. And you can see here they're 8.2. So what I'm going to do here actually is cover my back. This is kind of an insurance play, and this is part of your training. Because what I want you to do is cover the worst scenario. So the worst scenario for me here is that Como score and go 2-0 up. So I put a small saver in on that position. Because if Como does go 2-0 up, we'll be in a good position. These odds are going to come in. You could actually put a little bit more in as a saver if you wanted to. I'm fine with this. It's just about a little bit of insurance, okay? But if Juventus equalise, obviously we're going to lose this insurance bet. So part of your training today is I want to show you how easy it is to make an insurance bet in this scenario. We've used a fraction of our original stake, only around 14%, right? £1.40. and we're insuring against that second Como goal. Okay, we're insuring against what is the biggest risk to us. The reason is I just don't see this finishing 1-0 right now. Now it might do, and we've lost £11.40. But again, it's not a big outlay, and I think we're in a pretty good position because the market, the stats are telling us there's 80% chance of second half goal, and the odds are telling us, that there's a very good chance of a second half goal, as you can see here, odds of around 1-4 on a second half goal. So as part of your training, I want you, because a lot of people say to me, Martin, you show a lot of trades where you're just looking at the outright, right? Where you just, you'll lay it for £10 and you're just going to let it ride till 90 minutes. And then I'm like, yeah, that is kind of what I do, isn't it? But what I wanted to do was give you some options for insurance to show you that actually there's really easy ways to insure your trades. And as we've done here, it's fraction of our stake has insured us on the next go. Now, you do have, obviously, the risk of it ending 1-0. So I'd only really do this on matches where you're really convinced it's not going to end 1-0. I don't think it's going to end 1-0. These teams like to have second half goals. The momentum I've watched has said Juventus are going to potentially score the next goal, get back into this game. I think there's good value in laying Como, but I've also covered the 2-0 scoreline. So it does get 2-0. I'll be able to get back some of my stake that I might potentially lose if Juventus don't get back into the game. What we're going to do here is we're going to wait for the goal, in theory. And if there's no goal, we'll come back. We'll see how the game's progressing a bit later on. If the game dies down and if the tactics do switch around, I wouldn't have a problem with you getting out of the trade. I'm not a massive fan of that in general because there's so many late goals in football. But if you really feel like this is going to finish 1-0, it gets to 60 minutes, the game's died down, Como is sitting back on the lead and Juventus aren't really doing anything. But that's not why I was watching towards the end of that first half. So hopefully that continues on. And I'll either be back when there's a goal or we'll come back and reassess later in the half. Okay, so 70 minutes in, it's still 1-0. Now, this is where I think you've kind of got, it becomes marginal. You could stay in here, which I think, for me, value-wise, is still the better play. Or you could take your losses. I wouldn't have a massive problem if someone took their losses at this point. You're looking at around a £3 loss, around a 30% loss, plus the 2-0 bet, which is still live, by the way, if Como do get that second goal. The reason I like staying in this spot is that the rewards can be really juicy. So if we get that late goal, Juventus' odds obviously are going to go, really low. And also Como, it's suspended now. Let's see what's happened. Juventus dangerous attack. No, nothing. It's still, odds are open. So as we come here, you can see there's actually been a few shots for Juventus, 1 on goal, a few shots for Como, 1 on goal. We're in a position, because we covered the 2-0, and I'll show you that as well. We're actually in a position here where if it goes 2-0 late on, we're also in a good position with the trade, okay? Because we're at a position here where there's less chance there's going to be 3 or 4 goals. That could still happen, of course, but there's less chance of it happening. This keeps suspending, I don't know why, but this isn't. So who knows what's happening here. But it looks like Juventus is still attacking and going for the goal. So for me, this is one you stay in. I still think there's a good opportunity here. You can see it's lively, things are happening. But I definitely don't... I think when you get to this kind of halfway through the second half moment, I think it becomes more marginal. So you could easily take a loss here, a kind of 30% loss. Maybe you're going to lose that 2-0 one as well. So you're looking at maybe 40% overall loss. That's quite high still for me. I like to actually go right. Because remember, we've laid odds on. Okay, so we've not risked a huge outlay here to try and get a big percentage of stake. If Juventus equalise, we will get a big percentage profit here from our original, £11 that's on Juventus right now in the draw. Okay, so we're hoping still for that second goal. I still think there should be a second goal, but it has got to marginal territory. But because I'm watching the game, because I've looked at the stats beforehand where I've seen, it does look like these guys score a lot of second half goals, I still think it's a value play. I still think it's a value play if the bet loses, by the way. And you're welcome to disagree with me on that. Actually, if you do disagree, put it in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong in that respect. Because you can't just be beholden to the final result. You know, you can't just go, well, this ended 1-0, therefore it was a terrible trade. Yes, it didn't win, but value is about picking something that will happen more often than not and beating the odds. And I think in this case, we have found something that will happen more often than not and potentially beating the odds. And look, if it was 1-0 here and I could lay at 1.48 and I hadn't already invested a stake in it, I'd lay. So in that respect, I think you're better off staying in a trade that you have faith with and you have a reason for that faith that hasn't totally gone against you, but where you're in a more marginal position. But again, this is actually, I mean, in a way, this is personal choice. You could get out here. I wouldn't have a problem with that. So that's kind of a decision you have to make. What style of trader do you want to be? Do you want to be one that exits when you feel like you're in a marginal position? No problem with that. Or do you want to be one that stays in when you feel like you're in a more marginal position? I like to stay in. Again, if I take 40% stake loss here, you know, I'm still not going to be able to get all of my stake back, am I? So, you know, and I know the rewards could be good if there's another goal in this match. And I've got both covered. That's what I like about the insurance of going for the 2-0 here. We've got that scoreline covered. And as you can see, the odds have barely changed on it because the market knows, hey, there's still a live chance. So let's see what happens. Okay, Como just scored. So this is why the insurance is a good play here. What we're going to do is we're going to take the profit and then the loss on here. So it didn't go, because it didn't go the way we wanted it to, unfortunately. But that happens sometimes in trading. But what we have done here is we basically managed to claw back around half our stake. So I'm going to cash out of this as well. Because I just don't see Juventus getting 2 goals. They could do. And that's a marginal position where you could go, well, you could stay in the trade there. But we've lost about 50% of the trade because we picked the wrong side that scored, but we give ourselves some insurance. Now, you could have perhaps gone more on the 2-0. You could have gone for, obviously, a second half goal. But I felt like Juventus, using the stats we had, would get that second goal. It didn't happen. Sometimes that happens in trading. But again, I think this shows the value of getting in on the correct score market as we just trade out of that finally, because essentially we've saved half our stake and, you know, we live to fight another day. And this is a nice thing about laying the favourite when they're odds on, you know, because even though in this scenario the trade totally went the wrong way in terms of the fact that Como scored the second goal, but we covered it. We gave ourselves a bit of a backdoor. Now you might have wanted to kind of put more of a stake on Como 2-0 in this scenario, just so that you could, when you greened up on that, you could get out of it. But essentially it gives you a bit of your stake back, protects your bankroll, and that's why I like insurance with Betfair trading. You know, especially if you're laying something at odds on, because an odds on winner is going to happen. I kind of saw Como winning this about 1 out of 4 at half time. Like I said, this probably is going to be the 1 out of 4. Now, obviously, we're not at full time now. Anything could happen between now and full time, but that doesn't really matter. The trade. This was the trade we wanted to make. The trade is complete. It hasn't gone our way. We've lost about 50% of our stake, but that happens. Not every time you make a trade, even if you think it's value, are you going to win and are you going to make money on that trade? But guess what? This video is still going to get posted on YouTube. Shock horror, you're watching it now, you know that. Point is, as a trading channel, as a training channel, as someone who wants to train you as a Betfair trader, it's really important to show the wins and the losses. It's important to show how insurance works, as it did in this scenario. And it's really, you won't see that. As I said, you will not see that on any other channels. You know, I've seen channels that say, hey, here's a video, how you win every trade on Betfair, right? There's so much BS out there. But actually, the reality is that you watch a video like this and you can see how trading works in the real world. You know, yeah, sure, most of the videos I post, they do win, because most of the trades I make do win. But on this occasion, it didn't. But I still want to post this because I think it's really important to post the wins and the losses. If I just did the wins, it would be pointless, right? But again, think about insurance, you know, because what I want you to take away from this is I've covered my stake here. I've saved quite a chunk of my stake, and I got it wrong. That's what I like about Betfair trading. If you were just straight betting, you would have lost this trade, right? If I just laid Juventus in this scenario, I'd have lost £9. Bang, that's the end of it. But in this one, I've got nearly £5 of that back. I've actually, gained back, well, probably only going to be around 45% stake loss here when I got it wrong. And that's what I love about Betfair trading. So I think that's something you guys should look at and do as well. Anyway, I hope this has helped you. I hope this has helped your training. If you've appreciated it, let me know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you on board. We've just crossed 14,000 members. How exciting is that, by the way? 14,000 of you on YouTube watching our videos every week. I'm so just thrilled to have you guys with us. Such a niche market. We never expected that this would happen, and it has. But I think you guys like our honesty, our reality, and the fact that I will post winning and losing trades. I want to show you, I want to train you, and I want to give you the theory behind everything. If you'd like some of our free strategies, then just say the word free and I will send that through as well. But other than that, guys, have a great week. Hope you make some money trading on Betfair, and I hope you trade better than I traded on this match here. But I still think it was value. I still think it was the right play. Just didn't go our way on this occasion. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts, whether you'd make a trade like this or anything that I could have done better. I suppose kind of from a trading perspective, kind of reflecting on the trade, the only thing I probably could have done better was put a little bit more on the 2-0 Como score. I didn't want to cover 1-0. I just felt there was going to be a second half goal. 8%, I'm happy to kind of lose my stake if that's not the case, and the match looks lively like it did. But I feel like I could have probably backed the 2-0 more just to cover that if Como did score as they did, could have actually just basically greened up for the full stake and not lost anything. But you know, in that scenario, obviously if Juventus get the second goal, I'm not going to make as much money unless it's really late on. So yeah, we're kind of in a rock between two hard places in that scenario. But that is perhaps something I could have done on reflection. It's really important as well, guys, to evaluate all the trades you make. So when you make a winning trade, or as in this case a losing trade, evaluate what went right, what went wrong, why did it go right, why did it go wrong. You know, we knew that second goal was coming, we got it the wrong way around. There's ways around that. You could have looked maybe later in the second half and backed over 1.5 goals because the odds would have been fairly big when the goal actually went in. I mean, when did it go in? Around the 80-minute mark. Okay, so yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one.